a couple of years ago when the tax credits were revised, they made it so that the credits were only applicable to money spent in the state. Because for the 2 years leading up to that, people were coming to Louisiana, spending $20 million to shoot here, and then going back to Hollywood and spending another $30 million on post-production, but they were getting Louisiana tax credits on all 50.
Ooh.
So we were getting bled dry.
Yeah.
They rewrote the law to say that the tax credits were bumped up from 15 to 25%, but only on money that they spent here in the state.
Now, how does the tax credit, so you get 25% of the...
Of what you spend in the state.
Comes back to you?
Yeah, in the form of a credit from the government.
Which you then, if you have taxes due, you can apply the credit against those taxes.
Right, and if you don't owe taxes, you send in the voucher with the tax return and they send you a check.
Whoa.
But with the film credits, they are also what they call transferable, which is you can sell them.
Right.
And because those credits, in the film business, unlike the record business, the budgets are in the tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
So these credits can be worth millions and millions of dollars. So there are, for people who are, as we say, high net worth individuals, people who owe a lot of money in taxes, they can be a great investment, or they can help them reduce their tax burden.
So if you pay 50 cents for a dollar's worth of credit, you're still saving
that's
50 cents
right,
off
that's
your
50
taxes.
cents less that you have to pay the government. So people are buying and selling those film tax credits on the open market, and they're generally selling for about 75 cents on the dollar, maybe a little bit less.
So everybody makes money on that deal.
Right, but with the sound recording tax credits, they're not transferable. But they're also worth a whole lot less because the budgets are so much smaller. So and right now the sound recording tax credit is only 10%. Well, it increases depending on how much you spend, but generally speaking, for the budgets that most people would be spending, they're only 10%, which we're finding is not enough to really attract anybody's interest. So we're going to bump those up to 25%. But those credits are not transferable, so people can't really buy and sell those. Not that they would really be interested in that, because if you're spending $40,000 on a record, say, and your credit is 10%, so you get $4,000 back, it's not really worth somebody's trouble to try to buy and sell those. So those you just get a direct buyback from the state at 100% of the value, rather than 75 cents on the dollar like with the film credits.
Well, that would be an amazing thing. I made a lot of records in this state. So if I were doing them now under the new law, I'd get back 10% of all the
As long as you spend more than $15,000 on production in Louisiana. It's all about the in-state spend, what you spend here.
On production?
On production.
Which means, does that include musician fees?
Absolutely.
Everything.
Musician fees, producers' fees, catering, hotels, studio rental, tape if you use tape.
So if somebody in this room wanted to start a recording studio, and
they also apply to infrastructure. So if you're going to spend $1 million building a studio, anybody? If you're going to spend $1 million building a studio, you could get, if you're spending $1 million, it would be 20% under the current law. So you'd get 20% of your investment back.
And in cash, just here's a check.
Yep. In the form of a tax return is how it works. If you get your voucher from the state for your tax credit, let's say it's worth $10,000, and let's say you owe 0 taxes in Louisiana, you file a tax return with the state. It asks how much do you owe, you say 0, and you staple to that your $10,000 voucher. They send you back a tax return for $10,000.
What's the purpose of the minimum? Why shouldn't it be anything you spend?
Because, and this was an argument that we went around and around and around about, and it's a great question. If it were up to me, it would be to everybody, no matter how much or how little you spend. But one of the things that the state budget keepers have to think about is, are we really using this to generate new investment? Or are we just giving money to people who are already doing what they would do anyway?
Right.
So by setting a minimum threshold, they at least try to make sure that it's people that are either spending significant amounts of money or we're attracting new investors that wouldn't be spending their money here otherwise.